Chapter 2 Appamada Vega Heedfulness Dhammapada verses 21, 22, and 23 Samavati Vittu. The story of Samavati. While residing at the Gosita monastery near Kosambi, the Buddha uttered verses 21, 22, and 23 of this book with reference to Samavati, one of the chief queens of Udina, king of Kosambi. Samavati had 500 maids of honor staying with her at the palace. She also had a maidservant called Kochudra. The maid had to buy flowers for Samavati from the florist Sumana every day. On one occasion, Kochudra had the opportunity to listen to a religious discourse delivered by the Buddha at the home of Sumana, and she attained Sotapatti fruition. She repeated the discourse of the Buddha to Samavati and the 500 maids of honor, and they also attained Sotapatti fruition. From that day, Kochodra did not have to do any menial work, but took the place of mother and teacher to Samavati. She listened to the discourses of the Buddha and repeated them to Samavati and her maids. In course of time, Kochodra mastered the Tipitaka. Samavati and her maids wished very much to see the Buddha and pay obeisance to him, but they were afraid the king might be displeased with them. So, making holes in the walls of their palace, they looked through them and paid obeisance to the Buddha every day as he was going to the houses of the three rich men, namely Kosaka, Kukuta, and Bawariya. At that time, King Udina had also another chief queen by the name of Magandiya. She was the daughter of Magandiya, a Brahmin. The Brahmin, seeing the Buddha one day, thought the Buddha was the only person who was worthy of his very beautiful daughter. So he hurriedly went off to fetch his wife and daughter and offered to give his daughter in marriage to the Buddha. Turning down his offer, the Buddha said, even after seeing Dana, Arati, and Raga, the daughters of Mara, I felt no desire in me for sensual pleasures. After all, what is this which is full of urine and filth, and which I don't like to touch even with my foot? On hearing those words of the Buddha, both the Brahmin and his wife attained Anagami Megha and Phala. They entrusted their daughter to the care of her uncle and themselves joined the order. Eventually, they attained arahantship. The Buddha knew from the beginning that the Brahmin and his wife were destined to attain anagami fruition that very day. Hence, his reply to the Brahmin in the above manner. However, the daughter Magandiya became very bitter and sore, and she vowed to take revenge if and when an opportunity arose. Later, her uncle presented Magandiya to King Udina, and she became one of his chief queens. Magandiya came to learn about the arrival of the Buddha in Kosambi and about how Samavati and her maids paid obeisance to him through holes in the walls of their living quarters. So she planned to take her revenge on the Buddha and to harm Samavati and her maids who were ardent devotees of the Buddha. Magandiya told the king that Samavati and her maids had made holes in the walls of their living quarters and that they had outside contacts and were disloyal to the king. King Udena saw the holes in the walls, but when the truth was told, he did not get angry. But Magandiya kept on trying to make the king believe Samavati was not loyal to him and was trying to kill him. On one occasion, knowing that the king would be visiting Samavati within the next few days and that he would be taking along his lute with him, Magandiya inserted a snake into the lute and closed the hole with a bunch of flowers. Magandiya followed King Udina to Samavati's quarters after trying to stop him on the pretext that she had some presentiment and felt worried about his safety. At Samavati's place, Magandiya removed the bunch of flowers from the hole of the lute. The snake came out hissing and coiled itself on the bed. When the king saw the snake, he believed Magandiya's words that Samavati was trying to kill him. The king was furious. He commanded Samavati to stand and all her ladies to line up behind her. Then he fitted his bow with an arrow dipped in poison and shot the arrow. But Samavati and her ladies bore no ill will towards the king, and through the power of good will, Mitta, the arrow turned back, although an arrow shot by the king usually went even through a rock. Then the king realized the innocence of Samavati, and he gave her permission to invite the Buddha and his disciples to the palace for alms food and for delivering discourses. Markandeya, realizing that none of her plans had materialized, made a final infallible plan. She sent a message to her uncle with full instructions to go to Samavati's place and burn down the building with all the women inside. As the house was burning, Samavati and her maids of honor, numbering 500, kept on meditating. Thus, some of them attained Sagaragami fruition and the rest attained Anagami fruition. As the news of the fire spread, the king rushed to the scene, but it was too late. He suspected that it was done at the instigation of Markandeya, but he did not show that he was suspicious. Instead, he said, while Samawati was alive, I had been fearful and alert, thinking I might be harmed by her. But now my mind is at peace. Who could have done this? It must have been done only by someone who loves me very dearly. Hearing this, Markandeya promptly admitted that it was she who had instructed her uncle to do it. Whereupon the king pretended to be very pleased with her and said that he would do her a great favor and honor all her relatives. So the relatives were sent for and they came gladly. On arrival at the palace, all of them, including Markandeya, were seized and burned in the palace courtyard by the order of the king. When the Buddha was told about these two incidents, he said that those who are mindful do not die, but those who are negligent are as good as dead, even while living. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. Verse 21. Mindfulness is the way to the deathless, Nibbana. Unmindfulness is the way to death. Those who are mindful do not die. Those who are not mindful are as if already dead. Verse 22. Fully comprehending this, the wise, who are mindful, rejoice in being mindful and find delight in the domain of the noble ones, Ariyas. Verse 23. The wise, constantly cultivating tranquility and insight development practice, being ever mindful and steadfastly striving, realize Nibbana. Nibbana, which is free from the bonds of yoga, Nibbana, the incomparable. The bonds of yoga are four in number, that is, sense pleasures, karma, existence, bhava, wrong belief, deity, and ignorance of the Four Noble Truths, that is, avijja.